The latest.
At least 153 were crushed to death in the South Korean crowd surge. We're going to talk about the mechanics of such a thing happening. The police are currently investigating. Austin has been the ET1, he says. ET1. The police are currently investigating as to why this happened, or how this happened, rather. Some of the preliminary investigations show that they were too preoccupied with traffic to recognize crowd control was a necessity. This, of course, happened during the Halloween. This happened basically during their Halloween celebrations.
However, on the tragedy in South Korea, more than 150 people were killed during a Halloween celebration, crushed to death in a narrow alleyway.
Now, questions about how everything got so out of control. Our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, is there live in Seoul with more for us. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Robin. And to try to provide some answers to those questions, police say that they've gathered footage from 50 surveillance cameras from this alley and around here. But a short time ago, a police chief offering one possible cause to this crowd crush. He said there were only 137 officers on hand for 100.
Itaewon is like their America town area, and anytime something happens there, shit gets blamed on the U.S. Are you leaving? Here, you're speaking to the microphone if you want.
Bye, everybody. Happy Halloween.
Okay, well, there's...
What?
Don't say that during this news coverage.
Well, I mean...
Okay, Austin, Jesus.
Well, look, I'm not the one that had it on the screen.
Okay, bye, Austin.
Sad Halloween.
On his way out. On his way out, dude.
I didn't know what else.
Had to do it to him.
I didn't mean to... Of course it's tragic. I'm sorry. My timing
Classic Austin timing.
All right.
Yet another classic certified Austin moment right there.
Yep. What are you, a chicken?
No, I'm a sheep.
Oh.
Bah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't.
I'm a communist sheep, brother.
Right.
Typical of commies. Typical of commie bastards. Also, how would I be a chicken? What chicken is fuzzy?
I don't know what a chicken
Have you never
looks
seen a chicken? Jesus Christ.
I grew up in the suburbs. I don't know what a chicken looks like.
Okay.
The only chicken I saw was nugget form.
Okay. All right. Well, it's a wonderful experience, Austin. Thank you.
Wonderful experience. I made the bed upstairs. I cleaned up. I did leave some boots behind, but I'm going to get them next time I'm here.
Okay. All right.
I left some boots and a few.
Wait, speaking to the microphone, and also answer this question. Are you going to stay here again, or what's up?
I will be back. I'll sometimes I'll go to my hotel because the bathroom lighting is fire and to take some good pictures. But I will be coming back to stay again. It's a 5-star. I'm rating it 5 stars.
Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be back. All right. Take care, everybody. I should also move to Los Angeles.
You should.
It's a wonderful city. And congratulations to Brazil. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
The radical left, folks, spreading their agenda worldwide. Not going to happen here, folks. Not going to happen. All right. We'll see you later.
All right. Peace. No, I did see some people being like, Koreans were celebrating Halloween, which is another indication of Western imperialism or whatever. And it's like, bro, that's like, there's plenty of things you can say about, American culture impacting Korea, obviously. But like, that's insane. This didn't happen because it was a Halloween celebration. This fucking happened because this didn't happen because it was a Halloween celebration. This happened because the police were not fucking moving crowds in the way that they were supposed to, okay? Like, that's wild. It's just, it's crowd mismanagement. Why, like, as much as I love shitting on America, like, this is not an instance where I think you can do that. Anyway, let's continue.
100,000 revelers. This morning, authorities investigating how a massive Halloween celebration turned into one of Korea's deadliest disasters. That crowd surge toppling revelers like dominoes. Those screams and those images, rows of civilians and medics frantically doing CPR. Authorities saying at least 154 were killed and 149 injured, and there are 2 Americans among the dead. Police this morning taking responsibility, saying there were only 137 officers on duty as about 100,000 partygoers began pouring out of subways and into the streets of the Itaewon neighborhood for Seoul's first major Halloween celebration since the pandemic. By 10 p.m., this alleyway becoming a deadly bottleneck. The partiers converged from both ends, from the street down here below and from up there, and that alleyway is just 14 feet wide. In the middle, they were all crossed. There was nowhere to go, and there was no one to control the crowd. American Janelle Story was trapped inside the crush.
Oh my God, oh my God. I just saw in front of me this mass of people running and pushing and screaming and like panicking.
She survived. John Mamajono was there too. He came back to the scene this morning, describing the surge from behind, bending bodies forward.
Like folded forward?
Yeah, forward.
But like that?
Yeah, like that. She was like that, and she's saying like, help, help. And we get her hands, but we cannot get her body because it was so hard, because behind they are pushing upside on her.
Australian Nathan Tavernity's friend also killed.
I just was grabbing her hand saying, I'm gonna get you out. But then she disappeared.
Just after 10:30, first responders began wading in, pumping away at CPR, carrying away victims, many of them shoeless. In the coming hours, the dead placed into those blue body bags lining the street. And in hospitals, the howls of family members crumbling to the floor.
Jesus Christ.
Those 2 Americans now identified as Ann Giesk, a nursing student from the University of Kentucky, and Stephen Blessy, an exchange student from Kennesaw State University in Georgia.
For people who are wondering why do they cover like the Americans separately? It's just they always do that. Like every country will. If you've ever looked at foreign news, like in Turkey, if there was a Turkish person that was trampled there or a part of the stampede, they would cover it. It's just like, that's normal process. Every country does that when they talk about their own nationals.
Is that all of the fatalities happened in that alleyway behind us. The youngest was a child still in middle school, and you can see that crowd at the vigil behind me growing. A week of national mourning has been declared here. George.
So sad and horrifying. Okay, Matt, thanks very much.
Bing. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about with respect to this was how this kind of thing happens. Where was that video? Like, how do people die in crowds? During, like, how do people die in crowd crush? For people that don't understand, there was a mechanic, there was mechanics of it. What was it called? How crowds can kill you? How a human stampede really happens. So it's an issue that's solvable through infrastructure. Are more cops really necessary? I think yes. This is one job that cops would absolutely do. Yeah. This is like one of those instances where like more cops are necessary, because like their job is to do crowd control. This is like not an invasive and like they're not there to arrest people. They're there to make sure that people move. It's like how security works in crowds at concerts and shit. Yeah. The reason they're short-staffed and have been for months is because the president decided to abandon the Blue House's official workplace/resident in favor of Yongsan for no discernibly legitimate reason. And so the Yongsan police have been tasked with the security. I think this happened at the Hajj. This has happened many, many times. A good thread on what to do if you're ever caught in a crowd like this. Okay, we'll cover that as well. But here, how a human stampede really happens.
April 30th at 1 a.m., 45 people were killed and 150 more were injured in a stampede.
This was not a stampede, though. This was a crowd crush, right? Oh, here. This is the video I was looking for.
Hey there, and welcome to Brain Stuff. Welcome.
There's like multiple different ways crowds can kill you. Crowd crush is one. Stampede is one. There's another one.
I'm Josh Clark, and you are you, and that is wonderful. Let's talk about crowd crushes. So have you ever been standing in a crowd before? Say you were waiting.
Yeah, asphyxiation. Suffocation is usually how you die in a crowd crush. That's how that works.
For Weird Al to come out from backstage after a show, and then suddenly he does, and all of a sudden it seems like all the people around you multiply exponentially, and as far as you can see, you're surrounded by people, and all of them start to press forward, and you, against your own will, are propelled forward, and you're pushed into the person in front of you, and you propel them forward, and you stop and think, uh-oh. Well, if you thought that, you were thinking very clearly, because you're in a very dangerous situation, something called a high-density crowd. A high-density crowd is one where there's 6 or more people per square meter, and it can get a lot more packed than that, but that's the lowest level threshold. And the reason that's the threshold is because when you have 6 people per square meter, individuals in the crowd start to lose their ability to move on their own accord. Things get more and more packed, and the crowd tends to behave a lot like a fluid. So there's a couple of ways that you can actually die in a high-density crowd. The first one's called a crowd crush. Now, when you first start to get to about 6 people per square meter, the individuals lose their ability to move around. The next step is that you lose your ability to move your arms from your sides.
Dude, the way he's describing it is so weird, like the tone he's using. An excellent visual explanation by The Guardian of what happened in Korea. See this chart in particular. A change from approximately 4 to 6 individuals per square meter changes us behaving like people to behaving like fluids. It's low risk if you have 2 people per square meter. It's high risk when the density goes up to 6 people per square meter. Bodies are jammed together so tightly they can no longer choose where they go, and they begin to behave like a fluid. Pressure waves can travel through them, and they lose control. I'm just saying his cadence. I know he just said that, but his cadence is like. Am I wrong? You don't think his cadence is kind of weird?
And as people pack in further and further, the pressure...
Especially with the fucking music, like goofy ass music. I mean, obviously he's not like covering this in the immediate aftermath of a crowd crush incident. So obviously there's no like emotional association with it. But like it just sounds kind of trolly.
From all sides keeps your lungs from inflating and deflating, which means you lose your ability to breathe. What's amazing and horrific is that people suffocate in crowds because they're squeezed so tightly by the people pressing against them. That's a crowd crush. Another way you can die in a crowd is what's called progressive crowd collapse. So say you have a bunch of people crowded together in a high density crowd and one of them falls down. That creates a hole in this crowd, and the people who were formerly leaning against the person who just fell down start to fall over, and so on and so forth, and a domino effect is created. People start to pile up, and the ones on bottom are literally pressed to death by the humans who have piled up on top of them. So why don't people just get up and go? Get out of the crowd? Well, the short answer is they can't. One mark for humanity is that crowd researchers have shown that when individuals are...
Oh my God, it's verbatim this? You're covering this while dressed as a lamb? Yeah, you're right. Maybe I should stop casting stones from my glass house here.
Given information, say something like, oh, someone ahead is being crushed to death, they respond positively by, say, backing up and alleviating the pressure on the crowd in front. The problem is humans aren't ants. We don't transmit information through crowds like ants do, and so people end up dying in crowd crushes and progressive crowd collapses because the people in the back are pushing forward. Another common misconception are mass panics and stampedes. So there's this idea that people stampede over one another, and that's how deaths occur in crowd crushes. This is really off point. In fact, if you have enough room to run roughshod over your fellow humans to get from point A to point B, there's probably enough room for those fellow humans to get out of the way. So stampedes really don't cost any lives whatsoever. That's not the problem with crowd crushes. And the same with mass panics. Very rarely do entire crowds panic and move in a panicked way. In fact, you can suffocate in a crowd crush in a very calm crowd that's just entered a bottleneck in a narrow corridor and trying to get out of an exit. People just quietly die, pinned up against their fellow human beings who are leaving the place. So crowd researchers are using computers now to predict high-density crowds and stop them before they turn fatal. They're using video feeds fed into artificial intelligence, which analyze crowds for things like increases in body heat or people swaying from side to side, which is a telltale sign that they're no longer moving on their own volition. So what do you do if you find yourself in a crowd? Well, get out. That's the best thing you can do. But as you're entering a crowd researchers suggest that you pay attention, stop talking, and listen ahead for people calling for help or saying move back or any other indication that there's a crowd crush going on. In that case, get back as far as you can. If you find yourself in a crowd and it starts to surge forward, follow the crowd movement, but move to the side as much as possible. Just stay out of crowds. How about that? If you ever
Yeah, there was a 360 because we live in 2022 in a hellish dystopia where everyone has a fucking phone. There are multiple angles and so much coverage over this, but there's literally like videos where you can see, I mean, this is not NSFW, but I still don't want to show it because it's like really fucking brutal. There are people live streaming it. Anyway, for a lot of people, it's probably super easy to avoid crowds, especially if you're on Twitch. But it's not easy to avoid the top of the hour ad break because that comes at the top of the hour. Well, actually, it is easy. You can avoid the ads at the top of the hour by subscribing for $5 or for free with the Twitch Prime. By connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, you get one free Prime subscription a month. Bro, shout out to whoever gifted me a sub. Y'all are the true homie. That is another way you can avoid the ads. Here's the 1 minute ad break now. Okay. We're gonna cover what to do in a crowd crush, an informational thread in light of the Itaewon Dawn Seoul tragedy. Even if you think this will never happen to you, taking a moment to learn what to do in this situation could save your life and lives of those around you. When you are entering a venue, make note of the exits. Number 1, if you're attending a concert or a large event, make sure you make note of where the emergency exits are when entering. Once it gets too crowded, the main exit might not be the most viable option. Number 2, learn how to watch crowd density. This may be the most important step in a thread. Once crowd density reaches 6 people per square meter or more, it becomes very dangerous. So the moment that you start realizing that you can't move your arms, okay, you're stuck. Understand where crowd crush happens. Most crowd crush deaths occur in small spaces such as alleyways and mosh pits. This is why it's best to leave venues early and not wait for things to get dangerous, since others may get the same idea and crush at the exit. Alert people. Since crowd crushes occur in loud environments, people outside the crush have no idea it's happening. If you're not at an organized event and notice a crowd crush, get up high. Alert security and event organizers to stop the music and make everyone aware. And make space around your chest. If you're stuck in a crowd and you feel density increasing, make space around your chest with your arms. Pinning your arms to your sides or above your head leaves your chest open to being compressed. That's often the way you die. Do not take off backpack. Your first instinct may be to make more space by removing a bulky backpack. This is a huge hazard. People being pushed into it may trip and in case have a pile up. Once the crowd reaches 8 to 9 people per square meter, those inside can't move freely and the crowd behaves like a liquid. This video is insane. I think it's from, is this from, look at this here. Look, I mean, this is perfect. You will feel yourself being moved in different directions, but it's important you don't fight it. The clip demonstrates one of these waves. How crazy is that? Do not scream and push. If you begin acting panicked, hostile, and inconsiderate of those around you, it will become contagious. In this situation, pushing one person can lead to a horrible chain reaction. Again, staying calm and moving with the crowd is the safest choice. Do not fall. This is pretty intuitive, but it's important and must be emphasized. Your top priority once the crowd crush starts is staying upright. Once you fall down, people will fall on top of you or climb you. You won't be able to get back up. And if you fall, people will trip on you. They'll fall as well. And also, they might end up stepping on you too. It makes it easier for you to suffocate under as well. Avoid walls. Most people who asphyxiate in crowd crushes are pushed against solid objects like floors, barriers, fences, or walls. Do your best to avoid becoming trapped against the wall or even back of someone trapped against the wall to increase your chances of survival. Help your neighbors only if you can. Assess the risk first. If someone is slipping down and you're in a position to help them, you should. But if you're unable and someone is yanking on you to try to get up, it could result in both of you falling. Bro, disabled people are fucked. Yeah, of course. But I think if you're a disabled person, you know that already in situations like this. And that's precisely why there's always like a separate area if hopefully they're complying with like ADA. Hopefully the venue is engaging in ADA compliance. Like, yes, if you're a disabled person, do not engage in the mosh pit, I think. Aftermath. When the crowd thins, there may be people on the floor. Since these things usually result from a lack of event planning, there might not have been enough medical personnel to help right away. In this case, volunteers save lives. The next part's about how to do CPR and when to provide it. I'm going to skip that part. And we're going to move on from this. But basically, before we move on to Paul Pelosi and the new chapter in the Paul Pelosi saga, okay? There was another bridge. The Morbi Bridge collapsed, which left dozens in India dead. This bridge was recently renovated by, you might be surprised to find this out, a private company. That's crazy. Now the death toll is raised to hundreds, I think.
Now, at least 141 people have died following the collapse of a footbridge in western India, according to local police. Hundreds were thought to have been on the bridge in Morbi in Gujarat when it went down, plunging them into a river. The bridge was only reopened last week after extensive renovations. Our South Asia correspondent Yugita Lamai reports.
Moments after the collapse, survivors try to clamber up what remains of the footbridge. At this
these are survivors who are alive.
Popular spot in the western town of Morbi, families were out together at the end of a week of holidays for Diwali festivities. Locals were the first to respond, helping pull people out. Some even swimming out to rescue those stuck in the middle of the river. At one of the banks, people tried to form a human chain to reach as many as they could. The bridge, built in the 19th century, was closed for renovation for 6 months, reopened less than a week ago. Schools were off, and so lots of people were here along with their children. The bridge collapsed because of overcrowding, Sukram, an eyewitness said. At the hospital, a steady stream of the injured were brought in. This is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's home state.
Yeah.
And his party is in power here. He announced compensation for those who've been affected.
Fuck the compensation. Beyond that, like, that is the least you can do. But maybe jail the fucking guys who made this bridge. I'm just saying. Like, yeah, the compensation is good, but, like, how about jail time for the people that claim to have renovated this bridge successfully? 9 have been arrested. Oh, shit. Nice. Bridges are usually designed so we can hold more people that can physically stand on it. People definitely cut corners. Okay. New information has come out. Indian police have filed homicide charges and arrest 9 as the bridge toll passes 134. New Delhi, Indian officials filed homicide charges against the operators of a suspension bridge and arrested 9 people after at least 134 have died when the recently renovated footbridge collapsed, sending tourists plunging into the Machuchu, did I say it right? Machuchu? I don't know how to say it. River in western Gujarat state. In addition to the dead, there are still a number of people missing as of midday Monday. Did anyone get arrested when the PA bridge collapsed? Well, people didn't die when the PA bridge collapsed, right? Also, that's America. We don't arrest. Remember when that happened in Miami, in Florida? That happens all the time. In America, our bridges collapse all the fucking time. No one gets arrested for that usually because, you know, those are rich people. Even if people do die, sometimes. Or even if someone does get arrested, it's usually not the person that is, cutting the corners. It was a suspension bridge, 142 years old, got overcrowded by 400 people because greedy motherfuckers let more people in for ticket money. In addition to the dead, there are still a number of people missing. The accident took place in Morbi, a riverside town known for its Victorian-era bridge and old town, and came amid a holiday rush. Tourists have been celebrating Diwali, as well as the Gujarati New Year, which fell this year on October 26th. This dude said our bridges are 1,000 years old. America? What, you think the indigenous population built the bridges here? Like, what's happening? No, man. Like, maximum is like a couple hundred maximum. Ten years after bridge collapse, America is still crumbling. 10 years ago, the Interstate 35th West Bridge over the Mississippi River in downtown Minneapolis collapsed, sending cars, trucks, and even a school bus that were crawling over it into bumper-to-bumper rush hour traffic, plummeting into the river below the rocky shore. 13 people were killed, 145 were injured, many of them seriously. The bridge collapse sparked immediate calls in Minnesota and across the country. Invest big in repairing and replacing the nation's aging and crumbling infrastructure. A decade later, experts say there have been some improvements, but there are still tens of thousands of bridges nationwide that need to be fixed or replaced. In the immediate aftermath of the 35 West Bridge collapse, the Minnesota Department of Transportation came under intense scrutiny. Oldest bridge in America is 273 years old. The Interstate Highway Bridge had been classified as structurally deficient, meaning that it was aging and in need of repair. In fact, some repair work was going on when it fell. The bridge was also rated as a fracture critical, meaning the failure of just one vital component could cause the whole bridge to collapse. And it happened. But in fact, neither of those classifications means a bridge is necessarily dangerous. And the National Transportation Safety Board determined that it was a design flaw and not deferred maintenance, neglect, or other problems that cause the 35 West Bridge to collapse. Gusset plates that hold the bridge's huge steel beams together were only half as thick as they should have been. Corner cutting. The NTSB also found that nearly 300 tons of construction equipment and materials stockpiled in the bridge deck for the ongoing repair work contributed to the collapse by further stressing the crucial gusset plate that failed. The design flaw was that the bridge wasn't bridging, as bridges are known to do. Oh, we're going to cover the affirmative action shit. Don't worry. Just tuned in and literally thought you were talking about the bridge collapse in India. Guess our infrastructure isn't much better. No, I was talking about the bridge collapse in India. And then I moved on from the, Victorian era bridge that was recently supposed to be repaired that wasn't repaired adequately and had far too many people on it to America's bridges and our shitty crumbling infrastructure because I'm an American. One of America's founding reasons we have liability comes directly from Pennsylvania with the lowering of a dam by Henry Clay Frick and Andrew Carnegie. From the video, it looks like people were on the bridge and messing around and shaking it intentionally. Regardless, dude, like, what do you mean? What is personal responsibility in a situation where it's a matter of, where it is literally a matter of people in positions of power allowing it to happen is always going to fall on the system, okay? Please stop being a fucking libertarian cuck. Stop. If that fucking bridge wasn't overcrowded by hundreds, they could be able to shake it and not break it. If that bridge was built adequately to withstand people walking over it, it still wouldn't have snapped, and also it wouldn't have fucking it wouldn't have collapsed, regardless of how many people were on it or regardless of how much they were swinging. Also, you're talking about a drawbridge. Like, yeah, it swings, dummy. Those bridges are supposed to. They should, or suspension bridge. Sorry, they should be. They should not be collapsing, even if people are jumping. That's a design flaw. Yeah. Bro, how do you look at a fucking bridge snapping and you go, "Oh man, how do I blame it on the fucking personal responsibility?" There's 400 people there. You think they're all fucking shaking it on purpose? Or do you think some of them are on there and they have no control over the shaking? We just looked at Crowd Crush. We just looked at Crowd Crush that occurred in South Korea, in Seoul, okay? Why did that happen? I told you why it happened. It's like tight fucking corners and not having enough people do crowd control, not having enough security. You can't blame the individuals in that situation. Half of them don't even know that it's happening while it's happening. That's instances like this are probably the best example that you can use for why governments need to exist and how a good government is supposed to overcome problems like this. Okay? This is perhaps the greatest example of why we need like zoning and ordinance laws, like all these kinds of different rules and regulations that capital owners consider to be a part of the nanny state that's hurting profits, okay? That's why you need it. You can't expect humans to fucking behave in a normal capacity. Behave as like perfectly rational actors, especially when crowds turn into fluid after a certain level of crowd density. All right, we got to move on to some funnier news, though. Okay. Hold on. Before we move on to funnier news about Nancy Pelosi, I'm gonna go pee.